We're kicking off a whole series of videos about Japanese art, and we're going to be covering everything from Shinto shrines to super flat. So let's start off with the very beginning with the Jomon period. The Jomon period, meaning straw rope, lasted from 10,000 BCE to 300 BCE. While the origins of the Jomon period is disputed, they were nomadic hunter-gatherers who later practiced organized farming and built simple houses of wood and thatch set into shallow earthen pits. They're thought to be ancestors of the Ainu people who live in Hokkaido. They're known for these decorated pots which get these patterns by imprinting rope onto wet clay. The earliest pottery were smaller, round-bottom bowls that may have been used for boiling or storing food. They were made from coiled clay and fired on an open fire. Later, when people began following a more settled pattern of living, the vessels increased in size and became more elaborate in pattern and design. For example, this is a Middle Period jar, which is very ornate in style, called flamewares. The scalloped edge becomes more exaggerated with thick grooves and curls. However, by the end of the period, the vessels become less flamboyant. The bottoms went from round-bottomed, which is suited for burying into the ground, to flat-bottomed, which is suited to place on a flat surface. They also created clay figurines called dogu. The purpose of the dogu is unknown, but some scholars theorize that they acted like effigies or religious fetishes. Many appear to be female with breasts or large abdomen, suggesting that they were associated with pregnancy or considered a mother goddess. The Yayoi period, meaning early spring, lasted from 300 BCE to 300 CE. This period was a time of mass migration, mainly from Korea, and they arrived in northern Kyushu. With them they brought really important knowledge from abroad, such as iron, bronze, and wetland rice cultivation. As farming spread, land ownership marked one's social status, spurring a feudal system that would dominate much of Japan's history. This agrarian culture lived in permanent settled village communities made of thatched houses. During the Yayoi period, we see the appearance of new pottery styles. These vessels were produced on a potter's wheel and fired in kilns, unlike the Jomon period, which were made by hand. They were less ornate with smoother surfaces and practical functional shapes. Jars which were made for storage, larger jars for cooking, and high-footed vessels were used to make offerings. More elaborate were the bronze ceremonial bells called dotaku. They are often decorated with geometric patterns, and even some have representations of domesticated animals and scenes of daily life. As the Yayoi population grew, society became more stratified and complex with distinct social classes. Prestige objects seem to have been traded among chiefs, and clan nations developed. During the 2nd and 3rd centuries, clans fought among themselves until the 5th century. Very first episode of the Japanese art history series. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and will tune in for the following episodes. If you want to keep watching more, head on over.
Alright, I'm Amy Waller, and I am going to do a brief overview and demo of making Egyptian faience.
Okay.
So Egyptian faience, a lot of potters know it by Egyptian paste, but it's by everybody else in the world it's called Egyptian faience or Egyptian faience. The name comes from when Europeans went to Egypt in the 19th century. They saw little scarabs and things like that, and there are two hypotheses. One is that they thought that it looked like pottery from Faenza in Italy. That seems less likely to me than the other thing, which is that they called all pottery faience, so like Chinaware or something like that. And it was sometimes even called Egyptian porcelain. So it has actually been called by many, many, many different names. It can be very confusing when you're looking at the history of it. But I would say most people in the world do call it Egyptian faience, which is what I will call it. It is the earliest invention of glaze. It was probably invented in Mesopotamia about 7,000 years ago. And it is mostly silica. The thinking is that before it was made, they were carving like steatite or soapstone, and then firing it, and that would make it harder. It was a very soft stone. And then at some point they started glazing it and also firing it. And then at some point they figured out that they could grind up quartz or sand and pulverize it and then make a paste out of it, and they could make more things, more complicated things more easily, and then they would fire them. So there are 3 types of Egyptian faience. One is what most potters think of as Egyptian paste, which is self-glazing, consists mostly of silica, sodium, and calcium. So you make up a paste, and you make whatever you're going to make, usually pretty small things, and you let them dry. And as they dry, the sodium in the paste comes to the surface and forms a glaze. And that looks like this.
And those have no coloring in them then?
No, these do have colorant.
Okay.
So this is copper.
Okay.
Can you see that?
Yeah.
And this is chrome.
And they're unfired?
They're unfired. So like the scum that you see on the top of it is the sodium.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then these are the pieces that you make. These are the finished
These
pieces?
are finished. These are all different. These are all different recipes.
Oh, wow.
To all different kinds of things. What really interests me is how they made it in ancient times.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what inspires me.
Wow.
So there's a finished.
Yeah,
Piece.
beautiful.
Gosh.
Yeah.
Delftware has been a national symbol of Holland for almost 400 years. Initiated by the demand for the waning importation of Oriental porcelain from the 1640s, Delftware quickly became an iconic national product and one of the greatest Dutch achievements. From the 1680s, the Delftware industry has constantly innovated with new shapes, decorations and functions. Their products were coveted by European nobility and royalty for their quality and diversity. The city of Delft rapidly became an inspiration to many European and even Oriental potters. Since 1881, the Aronson family, from my great-great-grandfather through me, have brought to market the highest quality Delftware. We confidently ensure that private collectors and museum and corporate curators will discover with us fully researched, authentic Delftware. Welcome to the website of Aronson Antiquaires in Amsterdam.
This kind of artwork, which integrates sculpture, painting, and pottery, has had a history of over 1,300 years. It thrived in the Tang Dynasty. Its glaze features 3 colors: yellow, green, and white. Therefore, it is later called tricolor glazed pottery of the Tang Dynasty. Tricolor not only refers to 3 colors, but many different colors. The making of the tricolored pottery, the same wares are usually used. The basic glaze colors of yellow, green, blue, white, auburn, and black are used in an interlaced way. During the process of firing, the glaze colors flow and interact with one another, resulting in a gorgeous and colorful artistic effect.
本来我们这个南十三村啊，就制作唐菜历史了。那是在20世纪初的时候，陇海铁路修到洛阳附近，出土了很多的唐南菜珍品。从那时候，我们南十三村就有人，以这个修补的这种方式，学会制作唐菜这种制作工艺。
In the early 50s of the 20th century, in the Nanshishan village, located in the north of Luoyang, Henan, China, most of the villagers have learned to replicate the tricolored pottery. Gao Shui Wang, who has lived in this village since his birth, is one of the best among them.
改革开放以后，到80年以后，我在家里边自己建了一个小窑炉，只能装1件到2件那个唐南菜码。从那时候烧制的时候，实际上是烧制那个失败的次数太多了，整整花了7年的时间， 才真正才制作出来一件唐菜的马，是我比较感兴趣的一件唐菜马。
At the age of 17, Gao Shuiwan had begun to learn to make tricolor pottery of the Tang Dynasty. After years of painstaking research and exploration, he finally mastered the whole set of tricolor pottery production techniques, including molding, glazing, and firing in the kiln.
唐菜的台点实际上有2个大的台点，第一，它的雕塑造型是非常多；第二个台点是，它的釉色是比较鲜艳。所谓这唐菜制作这种工艺啊，实际上是比较繁多的。第一道工序啊，一般都是先雕塑造型，再制作成模具。成型制作完以后啊，它再等它晾干。晾干以后就可以入窑烧制。唐菜需要烧制2次，第一次烧制就是素烧，再上釉。上了釉以后再烧制1次，再入窑第2次烧制，烧成了以后就成品了。
In June 2008, the traditional firing techniques of tricolor pottery of the Tang Dynasty became China's national intangible cultural heritage. Gao Shuiwan is one of the leading inheritors of this craftsmanship.
曾经试装过好几次，再找回来是太不容易。我目的也就是让它能更好地传承下去。
Now, every week, there are pupils coming to visit Gao Shuiwan's Tricolor Pottery Museum to learn and experience the production process. Gao Shuiwan is often invited to give lectures at colleges and universities. Tricolored pottery of the Tang Dynasty, spanning across thousands of years, has been lost but luckily retrieved. Throughout its inheritance and development, it is now marching in a new posture to the future.